All right, old school NBA fans, self-research, NBA facts. Got another video for you. As always, thanks to anybody who watches my videos, subscribes to my channel. I really appreciate it. In this video here, what I'm going to talk about is players through the years who have had an extreme physical advantage. Physical advantage is not the same thing as a skilled player. It has nothing to do with, making the right basketball play, being good in the clutch, sinking those crucial free throws. This is, before you even take the court, you have an advantage based on your size, whether it be height, weight, a combination of the two, period. And it just cannot be confused with the skill of a player, and it must be taken into account when you evaluate and compare players. You can't just say, oh, well, he dominated. Well, another very vital thing too is the refs that have allowed a lot of things they shouldn't have allowed. If they went by the letter of the law, these players would not be as effective, but for some reason they overlooked some of these guys through the years, more recent than in the past. But believe me, it's quite real. So I'm going to start with Wilt Chamberlain. Now, Wilt Chamberlain came in the league in 1960. He was listed at 7'1", 275 right away. There was only 7 other centers in the league because there was 8 teams. The centers were 6'9", 6'10", 6'8", 6'9", there was a 7-footer, 6'9", and 6'10". The biggest guy was, the tallest guy was Russell at 6'10". And I think Rudy LaRusso, but he didn't really play enough minutes. But the heaviest guy was Clyde Lovellett. He's only 6'9", 234. So he's given up 4 inches and 41 pounds to Wilt Chamberlain, and that's the biggest guy next to Wilt. I mean, huge advantage. But back then, though, they called fouls and traveling violations and all those things. You weren't allowed to just knock people around, but he could just turn around and just dump it right in over people, and there's not really anything they could do about it because of how big he was. Now, does that mean he wasn't good? No. It just means he had a physical advantage, a big one, that needs to be taken into account. So, like in 1965, fast forwarding 5 years, the league did get a little bigger, a little stronger. The centers were like Wayne Embry, Walt Bellamy. Walt Bellamy was 6'11", 225. Wayne Embry was 6'8", 240. Bill Russell, 6'10", 215. Nate Thurman, 6'11", 215. Zelmo Beatty was 6'9", 225. The biggest guy was a guy named Reggie Harding. He was 7 foot, 249. Even still, he was 1 inch shorter, which, no big deal, but he was 26 pounds under Wilt. And he was, this guy, Reggie Harding for the Pistons, he's basically a bum, is the word. He only in the league for like 4 or 5 years. He wasn't very good. But that's what you had. That's as close as you had. Fast forwarding to 1970, now you bring Kareem into it because he had a physical advantage, his height. He was 7'3", 225. So in 1970, Kareem is 7'3", 225. By that time, Chamberlain was definitely heavier. He's 7'1", so he's close to Kareem height-wise, and his weight is much heavier, which is good around the basket. But Kareem, he shot jump shots. He had the sky hook and all that. So he definitely had an advantage. But in 1970, the centers were, you had good ones like Willis Reed, you had Elvin Hayes, you had Wes Unseld, but they were undersized height-wise compared to Kareem. They're 6'10", 6'10", 6'7", 6'9", 6'11", 7 foot, 6'9", 6'9", 6'11", 6'9", 6'10", 7 foot, and 7'1", which was Wilt. That's what Kareem was dealing with. He had a decisive wingspan height advantage. No doubt about it. Fast forwarding to 1975. All the centers, again, Wes Unseld 6'7", always an undersized center. But besides him, they were all between 6'9" and 7 foot. He's always had that advantage. Now, it's not his fault, but I'm just saying it needs to be taken into account. But players like Kareem and Wilt, they didn't get to use the referees as well as having a physical advantage. So I look at a player like John Stockton. He had no advantage at all physically. He was 6 foot, 6'1", weighed 200, 210, was not a big guy. All his advantages were IQ, his shooting and passing ability, skill. He was a very skilled player. His defense, rock solid. So Stockton had to do it with working on it. He didn't just walk onto the court and be the biggest guy. That's just not how it was for a player like a John Stockton and Isaiah Thomas. There's many other guys like that. I mean, even Michael Jordan to an extent. He was 6'6", he was athletic, but there was plenty of other athletic guys. He needed the skill to go with it, which he had, obviously, and the mentality, all those things, the clutchness, all those things go into making a great player when you evaluate him. At least that's how I see it. I don't know how that's even up for dispute. So we'll take a look at Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq comes into the league in 1993, the 92-93 season. He's 7'1", 325. That's what he's listed at. The other centers in the league, like the guys that are anywhere close to him, was like Bill Cartwright, the Bulls center, was 7 foot 245. That's 80 pounds less than Shaq. Hakeem Olajuwon is 7 foot 255, almost the same height, but he's given up 70 pounds. David Robinson, 7'1", the same height, 235, giving up 90 pounds. Mutombo is the closest guy. He's 7'2", 245. That's as close as you get to this. And he's 80 pounds under Shaq. Patrick Ewing was 7 foot 240, almost 85 pounds. Vlade Divac 7'1", 243, giving up 82 pounds. He just had a huge advantage. Now Shaq was athletic when he first came in the league on Orlando. He was nimble on his feet. He had nice little hooks, and he actually had good footwork. No doubt about it. He was skilled. He was. But as he got bigger on the Lakers, that all changed. In 2000, there's no way Shaq was 325 anymore. He was probably closer to 350 to 360 range, just huge. The guys, again, the closest guys to him was like Michael Olowokande. He was 7 foot 269. He's given up 80, 90 pounds. Luke Longley, 7'2", 265. Luke Longley was a big man. He was big. And he was still probably anywhere from, 70 to 100 pounds less than Shaq was. And then you had Rick Smits. He's 7'4", got a nice, a little bit of a height advantage. But he only weighs 250. He's given up over 100 pounds on Shaq. You saw what he did to him in the 2000 finals. And Greg Ostertag was one guy who was, in the neighborhood. He was 7'2", 280. He actually did give Shaq some trouble, a little bit of problems because of that size. Somebody that could actually fight back against Shaq one-on-one a little bit. Well, Ostertag in the 97-98 seasons on Utah, they went 8-1 against Shaq. Now, I know Stockton and Malone and Hornacek had, a lot to do with that also. But Ostertag bothered him enough that, there was no problem for Utah to beat them. At that time, though, we got to understand, Shaq was allowed to move people. In the letter of the law in the NBA rulebook, if you stand your ground, arms straight up in the air, feet planted, and an offensive player with the ball, moves you off the spot, that's an offensive foul. It should be called right on the spot. I don't know how many times I saw Shaq bump a guy, turn around, dunk it, whether it was Vlade Divac, Dikembe Mutombo, David Robinson, didn't matter. It's like, what are you supposed to do when a guy's this much bigger than you and he can just move you off the spot and the ref doesn't call it? You're forced to, like Divac would flop a lot. Sometimes they call offensive fouls. Sometimes they wouldn't call anything. But the point is, Shaq was allowed to move people around, and that is illegal. It's illegal. And I'm just saying, again, was Shaq a skilled player? He was. He was a terrible free throw shooter. He didn't take care of his body the way he should have. He could have been much better than he was. But I hold it against Shaq that he had such a huge physical advantage. He didn't just dominate year in, year out like he could have and should have. So, moving along, we got LeBron James. Now, LeBron James is not a center, so he's not going to have a height advantage. But what he does have is a size advantage for his position. So when he came out in the league in 2005, LeBron was listed at 6'9", 250. The only player who was like small forward, anything remotely close, was Ron Artest, who was 6'7", 260. Well, he was in the East for Indiana for a handful of games before he got suspended, shipped out to Sacramento. He barely even saw Ron Artest. But anyway, in 2005, the players that were close to him in height, weight, combination, and, put together was, other than Ron Artest, was Zach Randolph, who was 6'9", 250, and Carlos Boozer was 6'9", 258. And these guys were power forwards. I mean, they were, they're power forwards. They're playing around the basket. LeBron James was more of a perimeter player, driving to the hole kind of a guy. So he was able to use his physical advantages a lot more. I've heard people call him the Shaq at his position. There's no doubt. Now, when you fast forward a little bit to 2010, the only players in the league that were near his size, his height and weight, Jason Maxiell played center, actually. He was 6'7", 260. Boris Diaw, 6'8", 250. Ryan Gomes was 6'7", 250. And then, of course, you had Carlos Boozer, Elton Brand, Ron Artest. They're all right around, 6'9", 250. Glenn Big Baby Davis, 6'9", 289. But none of these guys had the mobility that a LeBron had. Again, he's able to use his physical advantages, to the max. 2015, fast forwarding it, you had players like, again, Boris Diaw. You had like Blake Griffin, Rudy Gay, David West, Jared Solinger. But again, these guys are all power forwards. And the league, by this time, 2015, they're allowing LeBron to hook people when he comes in the lane, to use his off arm to clear out the lane, to make a layup with it. I've seen him do it, I don't know how many times in a highlight. Switch his pivot feet. So not only does he have the physical advantages, but the refs are giving him advantages as well, letting him use his physical advantages and not call the letter of the law. To me, that does not make you great, because the refs are interfering basically by not calling what should be a foul, a violation, traveling, whatever. I mean, it's insane. In 2020, you had players like Julius Randle, Bam Adebayo, Kevin Love, Rudy Gay, Tristan Thompson, Derek Favors. That's about it that was LeBron's size. But again, most of them lack the mobility. And of course, that's not his fault that he's strong and he's fast and, he can jump high and all that. And he's 6'9" and he's heavy and all that. Not his fault. What is the fault, I guess you would say, lies on the league for not calling this stuff correctly. In 2024, the only guys that are really anywhere near him as far as height and weight, you got Naz Reid, Bam Adebayo, and Giannis is 6'11", listed at 243. I think he's more like 250, 260. But he does have a little bit of a height advantage on LeBron. He does. So there is a handful of guys, and that's it. That's all there is. So, again, 24, Bam Adebayo is 6'9", 255. Giannis, 6'11", 243. These guys are in the neighborhood. But when you allow LeBron to use his physical advantages and the league does not call it, that does not make you a great player. If you're allowed to go into the lane, clear everybody out with your off arm, make a layup, you did nothing spectacular. The league, the refs, let you get away with that. That does not mean anything. You go into Walmart and you steal a TV. Okay, did you do something amazing, or did you just get away with something? Exactly. And I know that's kind of a stupid analogy, but you see where I'm going with this. Okay, another player, and look, I'm not going to talk bad about this guy because I really respect him, and it's not his fault at all. But Nikola Jokic is 6'11", 284. He's listed, and I think that was his rookie weight. I think he's closer to 300 pounds. So I went through every center in the league, or even power forward, anybody that was close to him, and there's not much. The only guys that are like Brook Lopez is 7'1", 282. Okay, he's in the neighborhood of Jokic, absolutely. You got players like, look at Karl Anthony Towns. He's 7 foot and weighs 248. So Jokic has about a 40-pound weight advantage on him. Nikola Jokic is a big man, and he has these physical advantages. Now, the refs are not allowing him personally to get away with stuff. It's just league-wide. He's allowed to travel. I've seen him take 3 big, giant steps. They count statistics, all stupid now. You pass the ball to a guy, he takes 3 dribbles, does a windmill reverse layup, and that's an assist. Like, no, it's not. It's not an assist. But that's the way they're counting him now, inflating statistics. And Jokic plays away from the basket quite a bit too. Being that size, playing at this play style, he has a physical advantage. Now, Joel Embiid, same kind of thing. He plays away from the basket. He's 7 foot and 280 pounds. So he's about Jokic's size. He is, no doubt. But there's only a handful of guys, and when you're allowed to play basketball this way, where you don't get called for traveling, you don't get called for carrying, you don't get called for illegal screens, you don't get called hardly at all for offensive fouls, and you're allowed these extra steps of whatever they call it, Euro step. Now it's just a step back shot. So when you've stopped your dribble, you can't just depend on you don't have to just depend on your pivot foot and shoot off of that. No, you can hop in any direction that gives you the space to then shoot the ball. So obviously it's ridiculous. Jokic is taking advantage of the rules that are there. He's not doing anything wrong. I'm not blaming him. I'm not saying he's not a skilled player. Obviously, Jokic has a lot of skill. He's a very good shooter. He's a good passer. His assist stats are inflated, no doubt about it. But he is one of the biggest guys in the league. And here's another guy that is new to the league, and that's Victor Wembanyama. Victor Wembanyama is 7'3". Oh, and another thing about Jokic or Wembanyama for that matter. What's considered the best defensive big man right now in the NBA? Jaren Jackson, he just won a Defensive Player of the Year, not last year, but the year before. He's 6'10", 242. So he's given up 1 inch and 42 pounds to Nikola Jokic. And Wembanyama is 7'3", 209. I mean, he's obviously skinny, but he plays, away from the basket a lot, which puts guys like a Jaren Jackson, or Rudy Gobert is 7'1", 258. He's given up 30 pounds to Nikola Jokic. And again, when these guys got to come out away from the basket, you have a guy who's lighter, your Wembanyama's going to have a big advantage. Huge height advantage. Of course he's going to lead the league in blocks. He's the tallest guy. His wingspan's like, 8 feet? I mean, he's like Ralph Sampson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Basically, that's what it is. I'm not saying he's as good as those guys, but defensively, absolutely, because he's so long and lanky, he can get to almost any shot on the floor. But there really is, you look at DeAndre Ayton. This guy won an all-defensive, he was on the all-defensive team. He's 7 foot 250. So he's given up 35 pounds to a player like Jokic. And then, like I said, Wembanyama is so tall and he plays away from the basket. He can just almost do anything he wants. Who's going to stop him? Not the refs. And with the lackluster defense, all I'm saying is these guys aren't, the skill level like of Jokic. Yes, he's very skilled. But I don't think Jokic would be doing this if the NBA got together and decided we're calling all violations. We're not going to call ticky-tack fouls. It's going to have to be a little more aggressive. But any kind of traveling, carrying, illegal screen, no more Euro steps, all that stuff, these guys' effectiveness would go down. Absolutely. Luka Doncic, Steph Curry, any one of these guys, LeBron James, their effectiveness would go down. And the league just doesn't have the balls to make these calls. You know what I mean? They're being a bunch of bitches. They're letting the players run roughshod over the league is what's happening. And do I blame a player like Luka Doncic? You know, he'll get in the lane and bump his guy and then take an extra 2 steps back to shoot. I don't blame him. You're going to get away with it. Of course, do it. Same with Jokic. You know, the stuff that he does. You know, I've seen him back people down. Like in the play, I watched some highlight, and I don't watch current NBA at all. So I'm not as educated as maybe some of you guys are, and maybe you can educate me on it. But I've seen highlights where Nikola Jokic has backed down either Anthony Davis or LeBron James and just move them right off the spot, just like Shaq used to do. No call. They just do not call offensive fouls. You can basically do anything you want to get to the basket. So if you're bigger and stronger and taller, you got the advantage. There's no resistance of any kind, either from the defense or from the refs. Anthony Davis, this guy, you know, first team all defense last year. He's 6'10", 255. He's given up 1 inch and about 30, 35, 40 pounds, whatever it is, to Jokic. So Jokic has an advantage. He uses it. He backs him down and then, you know, scores a post layup on him. It's that simple. You know, the refs just don't call this stuff. And over the years, players like Wilt Chamberlain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, and unfortunately, I'm not all the way there yet, but Jokic is almost in that class because he's got such a physical advantage. He's just like the biggest guy on the floor every game. And he can do what he wants pretty much whenever he wants. And he's doing that right now. Not saying he's not skilled. Please don't get it twisted. Clearly the best player in the NBA. You know, you look at a guy like Giannis, 6'11", 243. How would he do if he wasn't allowed to take these big, gigantic 3-step layups and dunks that he does? He'd still be a really good player, I'm sure. But, you know, he wouldn't be what he is now. You know what I'm saying? If he had, you know, resistance between the defense and the refs, you had to worry about both those things, then I just think that you would see a lot different product on the floor. And these guys wouldn't be having all these crazy stats like they're having. So anyway, that's about all I got for this video. Please hit the like button if you liked it. Thanks for watching. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. I try to give daily content, very active in the comments. Till next time.